This is my current guitar collection at home, and I love it. But lately, I've been thinking, do I have too many guitars? And the more important question, how many guitars do you really need? Well, in today's video, let's talk about it. A couple days ago, my daughter Sloan asked me how many guitars I own, to which I replied, I have 7, which is the number of guitars on the guitar wall. But then she quickly corrected me and said, you have 2 by your computer, and you got 1 in the living room. I also have this handmade 3-string cedar cigar box guitar, an acoustic with a broken headstock in my storage, and my first ever electric guitar at my parents' house. And that's when I started thinking, man, I'm starting to forget about guitars I own, and that's when I started thinking about the topic of today's video. So I did what we all do in situations like this. I went on YouTube and I went on Google. On YouTube, I found some cool videos from Keith from 5 Watt World, and from the minimalist musician. And that's a hard 2 words to say. Each of those guys had great videos on this subject and I love their opinion. Go check them out. And on Google, the first page I saw was from Breakthrough Guitar. These guys had conducted a poll and they had numbers to show us the average guitars that musicians have. According to this article, the average guitarist has 4 guitars. And they broke it down even further. Amateur guitarists have 1 to 3 guitars. Semi-pro guitar players have 3 to 7, and pro guitarists have 7+, all the way up to hundreds for all those guys who collect these instruments. After seeing these numbers, I have to agree with them, and it made me feel better about my collection. And I wanted to go over these subcategories, and maybe we can answer the question to today's topic. It's super nice out right now. Why don't we take this conversation on the road and go get a coffee? We made it. Now let's go over that first category of guitar players, amateurs, and I'm actually gonna group beginners with these guys as well. And according to breakthroughguitar.com, they have 1 to 3 guitars. In my experience, this was the case when I was a beginner. When I first started, I had a $100 G.A.S guitar, which you guys saw earlier, and I played that thing for 3 years. And I finally was able to save up enough money one summer to buy an Epiphone Les Paul, which was 3 years later. And then I played that Epiphone for another 10 years before I got my first Gibson. Now on the amateur side, I know guys my age that have played since they were kids, and they don't do music for a living, they just do it as a hobby, and they have 1 good Strat or a 1 Les Paul, and that's good enough for them. I love this approach because it makes you become a minimalist, because you don't need all this other gear that you're not going to use. And the beautiful thing about 1 guitar at this point is that you get to really know that guitar. My G.A.S, I played the shit out of it and I just knew that thing like the back of my hand. So to answer that question, how many guitars do you need as an amateur? I think you just need 1 guitar, 1 really good guitar. As a beginner, how many guitars do you need? You just need 1 guitar, especially as a beginner. So get good at that guitar. Then later on, when you get better and when you save some money, you can upgrade your instrument. And I always recommend this tip for parents whose kids are asking them to play guitar. I say get them a little bit better guitar, because those $99 kit guitars you can buy at the drugstore or like on Amazon, they're just not very good and they're not very fun to play. And I think when you get a better guitar, it's a little bit easier to play and your kid is more likely to stay with the instrument. Hi there. Can I get a short dark, please, in a tall cup? And I'll just get a splash of almond milk, please. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the semi-pro guitar players. This is the category I consider myself in. We have an average of 3 to 7 guitars. Obviously, I have a little bit more than that. And to put this into context, I've been playing guitar for 25 years, and it's taken me this long to build my collection up. So it didn't happen overnight. I'm also very mindful of the pieces of instrument I invest in. Back in the day, it was because I couldn't afford anything else. These days, I'm very mindful about space. I just don't want a bunch of gear that's sitting around in my house I'm not using, taking up space. With that being said, because of what I do on YouTube, because I record music for bands and for myself, much like a painter with different brushes and different paint, and a carpenter with different tools in his toolbox, I own the guitars that I own because I like to have lots of different palettes when I'm recording and making music. I want to have a variety of guitars to pick from. Yes, I have 3 Les Pauls and they all kind of do the same thing, but I wanted a Strat, I wanted a Tele, I wanted a semi-hollow, and that's why I have the collection that I have. Another reason why I have several guitars, and goes for any semi-pro musicians who are playing gigs, is when you're playing shows, it's good to have 1 or 2 guitars as a backup, just in case you break a string or something goes wrong mid-set. There's nothing more unprofessional than having 1 guitar on stage and you break a string, you get to take a couple minutes to restring it, or something happens and you can't just go on with the show. And I truly feel that when you're playing shows, no matter at what level, you have to be professional and the show must go on. You have to put on the best show possible. Now, to answer the question, how many guitars do you need as a semi-pro? And in my situation, I think I need 4 guitars. I need a Les Paul, a Strat, a Tele, and some kind of semi-hollow. These days, I'm loving my Starcaster. All right, let's go over the last category of guitar players, and that's the pro. And according to Breakthrough Guitars, these guys have 7 to 200 plus guitars. And if you check out any rig rundowns on YouTube of The Edge, Slash, or any of those guitar players at that level, then you know they're bringing out 30 plus guitars on the road because they're playing that many songs a set, and they need a guitar for every song, and they probably have a backup for those guitars. So they need that many. Not to mention that they're also probably collectors and they have even more guitars at home, some probably vintage pieces that they don't even bring out on the road. So how many guitars do you need as a professional musician? Well, I think sky's the limit, and for those guys, they probably just love having so many guitars. These guys have the means to afford these instruments and they have the space to keep them all, and us mortals basically just don't. That was a nice little coffee date. Let's go back home, wrap this video up, and give our final thoughts. All right, we're back in the studio, and I want to talk about one more thing, and that's gas. No, not that kind of gas, gear acquisition syndrome. Now, I'm the first to admit I've suffered from gas for many years, and it's a terrible habit to have. Last year, I made 2 promises to myself. One was to start an Instagram page and start posting covers, which I did. I have a video about that right here. And my other promise to myself was that I wasn't gonna buy any new music gear that year. And I'm proud to say I did it. And one of the most valuable lessons I learned from this exercise is that it made me more creative and it made me more productive. In my opinion, gear acquisition syndrome is a terrible habit because it gives us an excuse not to create art or to create music. I can't write this song because I don't have this guitar. I can't write this riff because I don't have this pedal. I can't film a video because I don't have a nice camera. Instead of wanting that new guitar, that new pedal, that new amp, just make music with what you have and create with what you have. And I encourage you to be aware of gear acquisition syndrome. And this not only applies to music, but it applies to any art, to any content, to anything creative that you might be thinking about. So whatever it is you're thinking about, just do it with the equipment that you have on hand. That's my rant. So let's finally answer the question, so how many guitars do you need? Well, the answer is it depends on where you're at in your musical journey. If the journey you're in right now requires only 1 guitar, then awesome, use that 1 guitar. Or in my case, if the journey you're in now requires several guitars, then use those guitars. It doesn't matter. The most important part of all this is to just enjoy the journey and create music that drives you and that feeds your soul. And share that love with the world. And that's it. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you so much. please consider liking and subscribing. Hit that bell for notifications. I will see you guys in the next video. Pick up that guitar, no matter how many you have, and let's go.